If you have watched the Bang video, the three-point plan to hijack the nations of Aboriginal natives, then you will remember that I named President Thomas Jefferson as the president who coordinated and executed the first steps in this diabolical deception to intermarry within the Aboriginal tribes and take the land through the matrilineal marriage system of the original natives, and that this plan was being communicated through unofficial lines of communication. You will also remember that I listed 5 presidents that had their hands in this unbelievable plan. And now, I am beginning to realize the magnitude of this operation. All 5 of these presidents had agents in the field during their presidencies that were causing the types of problems suggested by President Jefferson. The three-point plan is very difficult to ignore when evidence of it is within their own records. What you are about to listen to is a series of letters from a Muskogee Creek Indian chief to President James Madison, and one other letter to John Roger Nelson Luckett, who I believe is an agent of the president that is working with the president in private communications. I only say this because I have not yet discovered any information on John Roger Nelson Luckett. But as soon as I do, the subscribers to this channel will be the first to know about him. Now, what I want you to do with regard to these letters is to pay very close attention to the gems of information that are being dropped. These gems are related to the three-point plan. The first step is to encourage the European lifestyle, and number 2, to control the trade market, and finally number 3, the matrilineal deception. The first communication found by the Bang takes place on September 29th in the year 1809. It is from a Muskogee Chief who goes by the name of Hobohoilthle. He is complaining to President Madison about the encroachments taking place on Muskogee lands. How white men are coming on his land, hunting, fishing, and cutting down the trees. Now, according to letters of the previous president, Thomas Jefferson, things are going according to plan. We know that the encroachments are designed to have 1 or 2 effects. First, to cause the natives to create an incident that would violate their treaty with the United States government, such as the killing of settlers on Indian lands. This would cause an invasion by the U.S. that would end with the removal of the tribe or tribes. Secondly, do nothing about the encroachment taking place and lose the ability to feed themselves and adopt the European lifestyle, whereby they would need furnishing from the government-funded trade houses where they would purchase on credit and go into debt, sell their lands a little at tea time until it's all gone in order to settle the debt. Or get hooked on firewater and go into debt that way. Or allow European men to intermarry with the daughters of the chiefs for up to 100 head of cattle per daughter, knowing that the land going to the daughter will one day belong to the half-European, half-Aboriginal children that are considered to be full blood due to the matrilineal system of marriage, and it is these children who will one day sell the land to the United States. Either way, the goal is to relieve the natives of their land. Keep in mind that the Aboriginal natives did not see this coming. It is very subtle and not so easy to see. So, without further ado, I give you Muskogee Chief Hobohoilthle. September 29th, 1809.
I am going to talk to you, my friend and brothers. This day I talk to you, the one who sits in General Washington's place. You will expect this talk is from me, the king of this nation. When you see it, you will expect it has come from your friend, the same as if it was going from my mouth, and that it is straight. It is from the chief principal towns. Now met who send this talk, Kowatu and Cusatu. These towns being the head towns of Muskogee. The man above us set us here. The Muskogee land is become very small. It has become small, and we hope there will be no more encroachments on us, as we are a poor people. My heart is no way embittered. Our land is now small. I have a great many warriors who are filling the land, and I cannot spare any more of it. When a thing begins to grow scarce, it is natural to love it. I have but 2 running streams left me, and I hope you will think I tell you the truth. I love my land, for my children to play on. I have some few of them left, my women, children, and warriors for them to enjoy it. I have seen my folly. I could not help it. when I am sensible of it, but I cannot help it. I am not vexed at anything past, I am now sensible of it, I have no room for warriors to amuse themselves on. I hope you will think I have told you right. What land we have left, we cannot spare, and you will find we are distressed. I am now sensible of what we have done. What I mean is, some encroachments on this side of Hobohoilthle, I hope you will suffer no more to be made, we are a poor people, and sensible of it. I hope, and beg you to take our situation into consideration, as you are at the head of your government. There has been some encroachments made over our line, you are sensible, where it was drawn, the men who were at the seat of government, and made those lines with you, have been, and seen them violated, M. McIntosh, Tuscanaw Chapco, and Hobohoilthle, and Alex Cornells, are of the men who made this line, they are here, and hear me, and they have seen the violation of it. Our agreement was plain, all the islands were ours, we are all to fish, but each on their own side, this line is violated, and the stock is drove over on our land. I tell you the truth, I hope you will consider of such things, which are not agreeable to our agreement. I hope you will take it into consideration, and have such things prevented, as if continued, they will bring us into trouble. For stock to get on our land, we have not agreed to it. When one considers on an agreement, which they have made, they sternly conform to it. The agreement was, if they came over, they were to be drove, and kept back, or put into a pen, and when the owners came, they were to pay for the damage in trespassing on our lands. We considered, if stock was killed on our land, it might create disturbance, and it was agreed they should be kept back. It was agreed upon that there should be a pen made, and the trespassing stock should be confined in it, and when the owners came, they should pay for the damage, but we have recorded none. Your people drive stock over, make salt logs, and gives them salt when they have been drove over on our lands, and salted, the river is shallow, and they will come over on our land. If our young people should kill any such cattle, it will create disturbances. I send you this, my complaint. I hope you will take it into consideration, and make your people keep their stock on your own side. I hope for the future that all such things will be prevented, my people hunting on those parts, till even there is fields cultivated, and houses made on our land. I hope you will prevent it for the future, as this talk comes from the tongue of the nation. We made no agreement for cutting red cedar on our land, and this is done, and I hope you will give orders to your officers to prevent this in future. One other thing, your people frequently come over, fire hunting, and kill our game. They come over hunting boar on our land, and fall our trees. All game on our land is ours. I hope you will take measures to prevent its being done again. Your line is the water's edge, all islands are ours. Our agreement was, if your people wanted fish, they were to stand on their land, and fish in the river. In case of boats navigating the river for their trade, they might come too, and their crews, encamp on our land, and use the dry wood for cooking and fire, but not to cut our growing wood. I am going to send my warriors out. They shall take a certificate from one of your officers to show to the intruders, and move them off. We send you this, our complaint, that you may see the intrusion on our rights, and we hope you will see justice done us. We hope you will send us your answer on this subject of our complaint. Colonel Hawkins, your agent is here, and here's this, which he will send to you, and I hope when you see it, you will cause us to be righted. He is well acquainted with all our encroachments, and coming through him, you may be sure, it is true. It is usual to send talks to one another, and in this way, we shall know what we hear is true. Our powder horns are empty, we have not 10 bullets, we yet have some turkeys, and deer in our thickets. What shall we do? Where shall we get it? We send this to you, to let you know our poverty, for we are very poor. My warriors are poor, we have no ammunition, our powder measures are so small, we can keep none by us, we have our guns, but no ammunition, what shall we do? Our goods are so very dear, we cannot clothe ourselves, our game is gone, we can get no skins, such as have stocks of cattle, and hogs can clothe themselves, others must, and do go naked. We send you this to let you know our poverty, our turkeys are grown up, and we cannot put salt on their tails to catch them, or have powder to shoot sand at them. Our blow guns will not reach them, nor is there strength in our bows to reach them. From your friend and brother.
Okay. Now let's get a little information about the area before we get back to the bang and the response to the Muskogee Chief. Ocmulgee Mounds National Historical Park, formerly Ocmulgee National Monument, in Macon, Georgia. The United States preserves traces of over 10 millennia of culture from the Aboriginal natives in the southeastern woodlands. Its chief remains are major earthworks built before 1000 CE by the South Appalachian Mississippian culture, a regional variation of the Mississippian culture. These include the Great Temple and other ceremonial mounds, a burial mound, and defensive trenches. They represented highly skilled engineering techniques, soil knowledge, and the organization of many laborers. The site has evidence of 12,000 years of continuous human habitation. The 3,336-acre park is located on the east bank of the Ocmulgee River. Macon, Georgia, developed around the site after the United States built Fort Benjamin Hawkins nearby in 1806 to support trading with Native Americans.
Who is this Benjamin Hawkins fella?
Sounds to me like they're hiding something.
For thousands of years, succeeding cultures of prehistoric indigenous peoples had settled on what is called the Macon Plateau at the fall line, where the rolling hills of Piedmont met the Atlantic coastal plain. The monument designation included the Lamar Mounds and village site, located downriver, about 3 miles from Macon. The site was designated for federal protection by the National Park Service in 1934, listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1966, and redesignated in 2019 as a National Historical Park. This information will be very important to remember later on, in future videos over this history. For now, let's get back to the bang and look at the response to Muskogee Chief, Hobohoilthle, and his response letter, which appears to be from James Madison.
You see, they ended up taking it all anyway.
Okay, let's get it. From James Madison to Hobohoilthle. November 6, 1809.
The President of the United States, who sits in the place of General Washington, the head of that government, and your father, talks to you this day. He received by Colonel Hawkins. Your talk on the 29th of September. That talk was at Chattagfall. It was from Coweta and Cusatu, the head towns of Muskogee. It has come straight, as if from your mouth, to his ear. He answers you. You are the father and king of your nation. He believes you are a good father, because you love your land and your own children. He listens well to your talk, because you are a true man. He believes you speak truth. Your land, you say, is small, and you have a great many warriors, and cannot spare any more of it. The line was drawn by us both. Your land is your own. Nobody can make it smaller without your consent. The trees and the game, and everything which your land produces, is also your own. Nobody can touch them without your leave. The President will not allow them to do it. But you know there are some bad men everywhere. Some of these men have gone onto your land, and turned out their cattle and horses, and hunted, and cut down some of your trees. The President forbids it. Colonel Hawkins will prevent it in future as much as he can, particularly on the side of Ocmulgee.
Now that is clearly somebody impersonating the president. Why keep referring to the president in the third person?
Yeah, I caught that too. Hold up. Let's break this thing down. You're right. Check this out. He receives, he answers you, he believes, he listens, he believes you speak truth. It says, the president will not allow them to do it. Instead of, I will not allow them to do it. And look here. The president forbids it. Instead of, I forbid it. And then down here it says, look for your father the president when he talks to you concerning this. Turn your ear to him. Instead of saying, turn to me. Now look down here at the bottom. The President advises you to do this. Now, look at what the advice is, here in the yellow. Fence in your lands, plow as much land as you can. Raise corn and hogs and cattle. Learn your young women to card or spin, and let those who are older learn to weave. You will then have food and clothing, and live comfortably.
Do you know who that sounds like to me?
Thomas Jefferson.
My thoughts exactly. Could this be what they mean by, white man speaks with forked tongue?
This letter is clearly not an official letter from the sitting President, James Madison. In fact, the name James Madison is nowhere to be seen in this letter. It is clear to me that the language of this letter has a very familiar pattern. I don't know about you, but this letter sounds a whole lot like the verbiage of the former president, Thomas Jefferson. It appears to me that Jefferson is still operating outside the normal lines of communication. I'm not saying that this letter is from Thomas Jefferson. But, at this point, we have no idea, figuratively speaking of course, about who is the author of this letter. However circumstantial my assertions are, I have no other suspect to point to who would be motivated to write such a letter. The next letter that I discovered was written by Chief Hobohoilthle to a man named John Roger Nelson Luckett. It was written on October 24th in the year 1810, 11 months after the letter from a person supposedly speaking on behalf of President James Madison. In it, we read,
I am now speaking to the President. You have appointed an officer to act in your business. I am not vexed, but I am speaking plain. I am the President of this nation of people, and so I give an answer to it. I call myself Muskogee, a nation of people, I am so. I wish to be friendly, I am a native master of this country, and I wish to be good neighbors. You are too greedy after my land, I am speaking of my rights, I have got sense yet, I have not lost my senses. He that made us is above us, looking on us. He made the ground for us, and before we have agreed on the matter, you are eager after it. I am speaking before it goes too far. If your officer should go on, there may be some mad crazy people who would do mischief, and before this mischief is thrown upon us, I wish to prevent it, if I could. When I find things are going wrong, I must prevent it, before it comes on us. By preventing it, make strong the chain of friendship. I am speaking on this subject in this way. If anybody wants a master's property, he must ask the owner if he is willing, and if the owner says no, I love it, we can't force him to doing a thing against this will. Now, I am speaking. Our friends and brothers have a great king, President of the United States. My wish is not to be cutting our paths in our country. I am a poor nation of people. I wish my warriors, women, and families to walk on the country as little as they have got. You have taken all the lands in the country, and what little lands we have got, we wish we may possess it, and not be kept in uneasiness. Now I am speaking to the great king, the President. You have asked me for a path, and I have agreed to lend you my path, the one I lent you, the nation lent you, and you use it, and I am contented, and we are contented that you should use the path that your people use. If you are contented with that post road you use now, as it is. But the upper path which you wish will bring in mischief, and I should be sorry blood should be spilled on account of a path. There is a great many of our people in that country who may bring on some mischief upon us, and I don't wish that should be done. Most of our people near it have not much sense, and without knowing it right, might do mischief. I am in distress, a poor people, you must not force it upon us, we are the masters of it, wish there may be no harm, then you let us be in peace and contented. On account of the watercourse called Coosaw River, you asked me, and I told you, I could not agree to lend it, this river, we use the water, our families are settled on it, on both sides, the country is settled, and filled up. That same river Coosaw, you asked me to pass up and down for the purpose of trade. When I was at Kowatu, I saw your letter asking me then, and I said the nation is not agreed to it. I thought you know that before this time, when a man has any property, and says no, It is all I shall ask. I never force it. I am speaking as a nation. When you ask me, I say no. I am born upon it. I walk on it. I love it. I use it. I wish we may not mix together at once. When the red and white skin mix, passing through the country, there might be some not agreeable. It is my wish the family of red people may settle by themselves on their own lands. They suit by themselves. It's natural to them as their bodies. I am speaking as I wish for my country and nation. When I am asked, I say no. I love my property. When I say no, you thought I was small, that you were big and able, and you would kick me down? My warriors say as you are strong, you would take advantage of our weakness, force us, and kick us down. Then they tell me to speak. I beg you to consider upon us.
This doesn't seem right to me. Muskogee Chief Hobohoilthle is addressing the president yet once again. But this letter is to a man named John Roger Nelson Luckett. The name itself has a ring of deception to it. I can't help believing that Thomas Jefferson is at work here. Now I don't know about you, but the chief sounds like a brother to me. Talking about some of his people don't have no sense. Anyway, 7 months later, the chief receives a letter from the president. This one looks very official. Now let's see what the president has to say. Now, before we do that, take a look at who the president is addressing. Yep, the chiefs of the Creek Nation. I'll let you know right now that Colonel Hawkins is mentioned. But I want you to pay attention to is what the president says about Lieutenant Luckett. I'll talk about that and other things on the other side. Again, pay very close attention to what is being said here.
To the chiefs of the Creek Nation. Your father, the President of the United States, takes you by the hand. He has received from Colonel Hawkins your talk of the last autumn. Either you have not been sufficiently informed, or you have not rightly understood his design in sending out the two parties from Fort Stoddart. Good pathways and roads are equally useful to his white and to his red children. Rivers and watercourses are made by the Great Spirit, to be used by the nations to and through which they run. If his red children want to use the roads and rivers on which his white children live, they are open to them. His white children, particularly those in Tennessee, have to go a great way to carry their produce and to bring home necessaries from the sea. Now, if a shorter way by land, and good passageways by the waters from highways to the Mobile can be found for them, they ought to have them. The way lies through your nation. When his white children want to go by the roads and rivers through the 17 fires, the roads and rivers are all common. They pass without inquiry, being made to what tribe they belong. His red children have never been refused the same privilege. Colonel Hawkins will attend at your council. He will explain to you that the two parties were sent to measure the distances and to go down the Alabama in order to find out the shortest way by land, and the best way by water. He would have done it before, but Captain Gaines's letter to him was delayed by the freshes, or by some other accident. He will inform you that the object of the President was not to take away your lands, or any of your rights, but to prepare the way for opening a road and using the rivers, which will be good for his red as well as his white children. He will satisfy you of this, and then he will acquaint you that next summer Captain Gaines and Lieutenant Luckett will begin the survey anew. As the purpose is both just and reasonable, so your father the President will expect that his officers and men will be treated with the hospitality and kindness which he has always manifested towards your nations, and which he hopes will forever distinguish the friendship subsisting between the United States and the Creek Nation. Done at the city of Washington this 14th day of January 1811.
Notice that Madison did not mention the encroachment of settlers on native lands, nor did he talk about the chief's worries that ships traveling through his land and roads being built on it could increase the amount of liquor being introduced to the natives of the land. Madison focused on one thing, and one thing only. And that was finding a way to get produce to Tennessee. Did you also notice what Madison said? Either you have not been sufficiently informed, or you have not rightly understood his design in sending out the two parties from Fort Stoddart. That this information is missing from the previous letters. The chief talked about settlers encroaching on his lands and chopping down trees, but made no mention of the settlers attempting to build a road. Could it be that Thomas Jefferson sent men onto these native lands to chop down trees in order to provoke the natives into a fight against the United States? One thing is for sure. President Madison was looking for the best way to clear a path to Tennessee. And if former President Jefferson had anything to do with it, he would prefer to see these roads and waterways open in order to control the trade market, so that he could supply the natives with the necessary tools to adopt the European lifestyle and grow crops so that the natives will no longer have a need for so much land. But there was very little land, according to the chief. So if Madison was not looking to take the land when he wrote, and I quote, "Colonel Hawkins will attend at your council. He will explain to you that the two parties were sent to measure the distances and to go down the Alabama in order to find out the shortest way by land and the best way by water. He would have done it before, but Captain Gaines's letter to him was delayed by the freshes or by some other accident. He will inform you that the object of the president was not to take away your lands or any of your rights, but to prepare the way for opening a road and using the rivers, which will be good for his red as well as his white children. It becomes clear to me that somebody is meddling in the affairs of Chief Hobohoilthle. And I also believe that Colonel Hawkins has everything to do with this miscommunication." Now, on May 15th of the same year, just 4 months after President James Madison sent a communication to Chief Hobohoilthle, the chief responded back to the president. In his letter to the president, says this:
I have received your talk, laid it before the chiefs of my nation, and now give you their answer. It is harmless. Your speech was delivered to Colonel Hawkins, and he to us. He is like an old chief, and when things are wrong he is to look into, for both sides. You ask for a path, and I say no. When the president sees my talk, he will know I have answered in full. I have examined it myself. My chiefs and warriors have examined it. They tell you I must not allow it, and must say no. When the president sees my talk, he must know my people do not want to have such road. I am glad the president has asked us without doing it first. He must know, and I know we have some young people, and they will mix to the disadvantage of each other. I have a little path here that the white people makes use of, and my people are so mischievous that I have continued complaints of my people interrupting of them. You ask in addition a water path and road to the right of this. If we give it, it will be much worse that way than this. I have a large family of people in the country, and cannot govern all so as to preserve a good understanding. What land we have left is but large enough to live and walk on. The officers must not be going through our lands to hunt paths. I spoke last summer to you, Colonel Hawkins, and to the president about paths through our country. I told you no. And the president no. It would bring trouble on our country. I am an old man, and speaker for our warriors. When we find a thing will not be good for us, we must say it will not do. I, although an Indian, have a little sense yet. The great God made us, and the lands for us to walk on. I hope the great Father, our President, will feel for us, and pay attention. We hope he will pity us, and not take from us our rights. When friends ask for property, we must tell him straight words. If he asks for the waters of Coosaw or by land, my chiefs and warriors now present never will say yes. I hope it will never be mentioned to us again. I am speaking to our great father, the President of the United States. When he sees my talks in his great house of talks, I hope he will take notice and give me an answer. When his answer returns to me, if I am alive, I shall see his answer and be contented. I want to inform you of one of our own brothers, the Choctaws. They sold you some land, our property, the land to the dividing ridge of Alabama and Tombigbee. They say they have not received any money for it, and we have not yet settled it with them. As you have officers in that quarter, they ought to see to it. The Creeks are the oldest, and the Choctaws the youngest brothers. It is the Creeks' property, Coosaw Miko Humastobiko, Poor Matahau Opurum Nubba. They stole it from us. They stole our rights, and sold them to the United States. The land sold were to the ridge, but the whites come over, and take other waters, and are settled on them. On a creek above Cedar Creek called Sullivan? both of which run into Alabama. There are settlements of white people. A path very large from the edge of the swamp on Tombigbee crosses these two creeks. The path by James Cornell's crosses Alabama about 2 miles below Cedar Creek. Above is Biloxi. These lands were the hunting grounds of the Alabama. Our own color are playing tricks with us about our lands, and the white people encourage them is the reason why we say no. About the path. The white people are as difficult to be restrained as the red, and are constant habitual intruders on Indian lands. I shall look for an answer to this speech towards the fall. The two nations will meet, put their heads together, and settle about their property. And when we have settled about our claims, the President will know all about it. After this notice, if there should be any more encroachments on our lands, I hope you will call on the officers and soldiers to prevent it. This, I suppose, is the business of you, Colonel Hawkins, by order of the President. Cattle, hogs, and horses are put over and stray on our lands. Some will be marking trees, roads, paths. My young people being about and seeing them will be killing and doing mischief, and our young people will say our old people are crazy and do not look into our rights. The masters of the stocks will be vexed with us. I hope you will see justice done to both sides, that we may live in peace and be friendly. I have one article to mention to the President. The trading store, you told us there would be a house and store on your land, that goods should be cheaper than any other merchants, that they should be exchanged for small furs and deer skins. We are distressed about the trade at our United States factory, want to know what is the reason at the factory. There is no trade, my people trade at the country stores. Lead and powder is very high. I understood by the trees, there was a house to keep goods for the trade. We are told that the goods were to come by way of Savannah, and were to be reasonable, but our people cannot get any, and we are really distressed. Our poverty arises from a want of a market for what we have. We are a poor people in distress. I am for my father, the President, know the truth, and hope he will pay attention to it.
Let's do a recap of all of this. There is yet another letter from the Muskogee Chief, directed to President Madison. The chief talks about encroachments by settlers and their stock, or cows, and the chief is afraid that members of his tribe might kill the stock, as he says that they are poor people. Even with this fear, the encroachments continue and are not only allowing their stock to also encroach, but the settlers also come onto native lands and kill the game that exists in Indian territory. And to top it off, they are also cutting down trees on native lands, while also violating fishing rights on the land. What we have in the first letter, or response from President James Madison, appears to be a fabricated document by reason that the so-called president is speaking in the third person, indicating that this letter is not from the president, but rather it is from someone who wants the Muskogee Chief Hobohoilthle to believe that it is the president. But to what end, is the question? After the so-called response from whom the chief believed was the president, the chief wrote again, beginning this letter with "I am now speaking to the president." And again, the chief repeats the very same problems that he reported in his first letter. Then the chief sends another letter to a man whom I suspect is working outside the official lines of communication with the president, and I highly suspect that he is an agent of Thomas Jefferson. The reason I believe this is because of the letters to the chief, from whom the chief believes is the president, giving directives eerily similar to the talking points of former President Thomas Jefferson. But then the chief receives a letter, unlike the others. This time, the letter has the name of James Madison, who also claims the chief as "my children" and characterizes himself as the father. Although this document appears to be authentic, it does not address the complaints of the chief of the Muskogee tribe of Indians. The primary focus of this communication concerns clearing a path that would allow goods to make it to Tennessee by clearing land on Muskogee lands. What is also strange is the fact that this letter is not directed to the Muskogee Chief, but instead, it's directed to the chiefs of the Creek Nation. But what I do not understand is, why did Chief Hobohoilthle respond to this letter that is clearly directed to the chiefs of the Creek Nation? And what is even more strange is that Chief Hobohoilthle responds by repeating everything that was in his previous letters. So, how do we make sense of all this? What is the motivating factor that would bring all of this confusion? Well, the Bang believes that the answer will most likely be in the historical outcome of these matters. So now, the big question is, what was the outcome? The first of the chief's communications to who he believed was the president took place in 1809. 3 years prior, in 1806, the Jefferson administration ordered Fort Benjamin Hawkins to be built on a hill overlooking the mounds. The fort was of national and state military importance through 1821, used as a U.S. Army Command headquarters and a supply depot for campaigns in the War of 1812 and later. Economically, it was important as a trading post, or United States factory, to regulate the Creek Nation's trade in deerskins. The United States government fur trade factory system was a system of government trading without profit with Native Americans that existed between 1795 and 1821. The factory system was set up on the initiative of George Washington, who thought it would neutralize the influence of British traders doing business on United States territory. As an honest alternative to private trade, it would also further the prestige of the United States among Native Americans. Thomas Jefferson shared Washington's expectations, but was also hoping that leading men of the Indian nations would go into debt and be forced to cede land to pay it off. Private interests generally criticized the factory system. American Fur Company was hurt by competition from the government's trading houses and began a campaign to have them closed down. In 1821, Senator Benton of Missouri, who stood in a close relationship with that company's owner, John Jacob Astor, started hearings with the aim to abolish the factory system and open the fur trade for uninhibited private enterprise. Among the system's defenders were the future Vice President Richard Mentor Johnson and the future President Martin Van Buren. Nevertheless, Congress abolished the government fur trade factories in 1821, giving the government 1 year to liquidate the system. And there it is. The U.S. wanted the land the whole time. Even when President Madison told the chief that Colonel Hawkins would inform the chief, and I quote, "He will inform you that the object of the president was not to take away your lands or any other rights, but to prepare the way for opening a road and using the rivers, which will be good for his red as well as his white children," end quote. But as it turns out, former President Thomas Jefferson had already set his sight on the land belonging to the Muskogee Nation. What little game that existed on Muskogee land was confiscated by the government-funded American Fur Company. As it turns out, not only was Thomas Jefferson the mastermind behind this deception, but he began this conquest when he was the president, but it was Chief Hobohoilthle that prevented him from accomplishing his goals by refusing to allow the cutting of trees on Muskogee land. The chief's firm stance is one reason why Benjamin Hawkins had to fabricate fake letters from President James Madison. The other reason is that this operation was not authorized by Congress when Thomas Jefferson was president. So he used his unofficial lines of communication and worked around the prying eyes of President Madison, and get this. Madison was finding a way to Tennessee, while Jefferson was clearing a way to New Orleans. The proof of all of this is in one more letter. A letter to Benjamin Hawkins from Thomas Jefferson on July 11, 1806. Some 3 years before Chief Hobohoilthle started complaining about trespassing issues and homes being built on Muskogee lands. Not to mention the encroachments that made food scarce to the Muskogee Nation. This is what Thomas Jefferson wrote to Benjamin Hawkins in 1806.
From Thomas Jefferson to Benjamin Hawkins, July 11, 1806. Washington, July 11, 06. Dear Sir, by the return of Mr. Wheaton, I learn with great satisfaction that we at length have a clear prospect of a good road from Athens to Fort Stoddart, at least. He tells me you are satisfied it is best, and even nearest to go by Coweta. My own opinion is that distance is not to be so much regarded as levelness, firmness, and to be clear of obstructions. From Coweta, I think, nature has traced out the route most obviously and incontestably. That is to say, after getting on the ridge between Coweta and Tuckabach, which divides the waters of Chattahoochee and Alabama, to turn westwardly, along the ridge, dividing the waters of Alabama from those of the Gulf of Mexico, never quitting it, however, crooked it may be, unless occasionally to pass a spring for the accommodation of travelers or settlers. We are to open that route in the first place, which will be the best at last, because we shall very soon have a stage running on it. Above all things, we must not divert our road from its best course, to carry it by houses of accommodation. If we do this, there will never be accommodation on the proper tract. Houses must come, and will come to the road, if we keep it inflexibly in its place. I have been speaking with General Dearborn about stringing a few soldiers along it, at every 25 miles. He finds difficulty in that. Perhaps you could get some individuals to go and settle at convenient stations, of about 25 miles, which we may hereafter break into, 2 of 12. Or 13 miles. Till such steps are provided, it will be impossible for the post to move with dispatch. We have reason to believe we can now have permission to send the mail from Fort Stoddart by water for the present. In the meantime, under the directions of the Secretary at War, as well as of the Post Office, an examination is going on of the ground from Fort Stoddart to Pascagoula, about our line. So far we shall be free to open our road this season, or as soon as we please. From thence we must proceed to explore a way to cross Pearl River, at the most practicable and convenient place to strike Lake Pontchartrain, opposite to Chief Montour, whence there is a fine road to New Orleans. About the crossing of the Pearl River and from there to Pontchartrain, will require a good deal of work, and though Congress has given us the money, they have not given the authority to do it, because it is in the disputed territory. However, either the territory will shortly be ours, or we must obtain the assent of Spain, to our making the road. This part therefore cannot be done till the next year. I gave with great reluctance into the idea of a temporary establishment of the route, by Pinckneyville, but if we can carry the mail by water, from Fort Stoddart, we shall abandon the Pinckneyville route. On the whole, I am full of hope that with your aid, we shall now get this most desirable object accomplished, which is equal to the bringing New Orleans to within half the distance, and making our government of it, a practicable thing. The road, however, when completed, will need your constant patronage, and good dispositions towards it, on the part of the Indians. Whether it will be best to get some of them to settle on the road, or all whites, you must judge. We have no news from Paris, since the arrival of the Hornet there, but we daily expect to hear which way the wind blows there, as to our affairs. I tender my friendly salutations and assurances of continued esteem and respect. Thomas Jefferson.
You see, the land was the target the whole time. Plans had already been made by Jefferson, but he did not expect that the Muskogee Indians would stand strong on not allowing encroachments on their lands. This stalled Jefferson's attempts on creating a pathway to New Orleans. So he sent his agents into the field, Benjamin Hawkins and John Roger Nelson Luckett, to encourage the settlers to encroach on the native lands of the Muskogee Nation, build houses, hunt down the game, and begin fishing on native lands. This prompted the Muskogee Chief to reach out to President Madison. At this point, I don't believe that the chief had ever communicated the problems in his country to President Madison. From what I can tell, the last letter to the Muskogee Chief was his first contact with the president. But by then, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison had already had the ball rolling on what would soon destroy the Muskogee Creek Nation. The path was cleared, the boats and wagons began traveling the road and riverways, and the American Fur Company capitalized on the skins in the area. And if you can remember, Chief Hobohoilthle has already stated to the president that they were poor people and that there were some already running around naked. Then came the whiskey, or what the natives called firewater. The downfall of the Muskogee Creek nations was their unwillingness to conform to the European lifestyle as suggested by Thomas Jefferson. It wasn't long before the tribes went into debt and succeeded lands to cover the debt. Until one day, there was not enough land to cover the debt. This was done to many native tribes. And it was all done on purpose. With that, I leave you with the words of the 5th President of the United States. The only president that killed the banking system in America. Andrew Jackson killed the bank because he didn't want what happened to all the Aboriginal nations of Indians by the U.S. government to happen to American citizens through the banking system of credit and debt. So, here we are, 217 years later. And I ask you, how many of us are in debt to the banking system today? If you've been to this channel more than once, please subscribe, as it truly does help the channel. Leave a comment, for the Bang looks forward to reading them and replying to them. Also, don't forget to like and share this content with like-minded individuals such as yourself. There's plenty more where this came from. Until next time, this bang content will end in 3, 2, 1.